What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Halftime Snacks podcast. This show features short interviews that you can listen during the halftime of your favorite sports events. Every Tuesday, I host fun conversations with talented people in the sports industry, where we'll learn from their stories, knowledge, and experiences. So go grab your favorite snack and come snack with us. Are you ready? Let's go! Today's halftime snack features an exciting guest who's super enthusiastic about innovation and digitalization. He's a serial entrepreneur and startup founder who has had 2 successful exits so far in his career. Today, he's the founder of Breakstuff, an AI-driven and blockchain-based shop for sports card collectors and investors. They offer a complete digital ecosystem that includes a social network, a marketplace, and AI grading for cards. I'm excited to learn from him about everything related to collectibles, NFTs, and their role in sports. Allow me to introduce Michael Schneider.
Hi, Ronan. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Michael, it's a pleasure to have you. How about we kick it off with an icebreaker, Michael? If you could choose only one talent to grow and develop the most super quickly, what talent would you choose?
When I look back in the last few years, multitasking is the way to go for me. It was really the most important skill and task I had in mind, and I had to do. Before I started Breakstuff, you mentioned it. I started a few companies, and when you are a serial entrepreneur, you don't have one specific thing you concentrate on. As a founder, you make everything, and therefore you need the skill, definitely.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about being a serial entrepreneur. Okay, you've had 2 successful exits, and I'm sure that you're not done yet. I'm sure that I've met some serial entrepreneurs, and one of the things they say is that they're not done, and they know they want more. So probably you have the same spirit. Let's talk maybe about what do you think are the pros and the cons of being a serial entrepreneur? Can you think about like 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages of being a serial entrepreneur?
Yeah, sure. I would say as a serial entrepreneur, as I mentioned before, you have to do many things, because when you start up a company from scratch, you have to do everything, and you have to learn everything, and you have to fail and stand up and do it again in a better way. So I guess that's the most important thing. You have to learn, to fail fast, to learn from it, stand up and do it better. So maybe it's some phrase you've heard somewhere else, but at the end it comes back to this. So we have to learn fast, and that's also the biggest advantage that you have as an entrepreneur. You don't come from school or from university, and you cannot say, okay, now I'm ready to be a serial entrepreneur. Maybe you have a good basement, you have a good background, but at the end you have to learn it. And that can also only be done when you start up a company. So it came all back to this, in my opinion, and to learn from your failures. I've also spoken on fuck up nights as well, as I'm celebrating my success. So you have to stand up for your failures and for the success you have to learn.
Yeah, for those that maybe don't know, Fuck Up Nights, it's an amazing concept created. I think that it was created in Europe. There's also in Israel, where people get together, especially like entrepreneurs and founders, and they just share how they fucked up, literally, like their failures and the things that they messed. Is there any failure that first come to mind for you, Michael, that you want to share super quickly in 1 or 2 minutes, the story of how like you failed and then how you overcome it? Is there any in your history as an entrepreneur? Is there any story, quick story that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, it's not really sports specific, but at the end of my last startup, which I've exited successfully this year, I had a lot of failures over there. Just jump in a topic, for example, or in an industry before I have done any research or marketing strategy. So that all falls back to myself and yeah, a lot of this. And I would say, yeah, the focus is also very, very important. Yeah, don't focus on too many topics. Do it one by one, and if you don't have the time, outsource it. So let anybody else do it. Yeah, that you have to focus on the most important things. Yeah.
That's an amazing story, an amazing lesson. Thank you for sharing it, Michael. You've been a card collector since you were young, specifically on basketball cards. And maybe that kind of like influenced you into building or pushed you to break stuff. Now this is actually super funny, right? Because it's pushing you to break stuff. That sounds like you're some kind of like degenerate guy who wants to just break stuff, right? But no, that's the name of the company, and I love the name. Big fan of it. So Michael, tell us maybe 2 or 3 other things besides collectibles that you were very passionate about, and we're gonna get into collectibles in just a few minutes. But besides that, are there 2 or 3 things that you remember from your background or your experiences that pushed you to break stuff, and not literally, but to build Break Stuff app, the collectibles company that you're building?
Sure. First of all, a few words to entrepreneurship and serial entrepreneur. Being a serial entrepreneur, I started companies not because the idea of starting a company or because I liked the idea of it. I stumbled into it, I would say, yeah. Because first of all, because of my passion for music and DJing, I founded an event agency, and then I was moving with my family and didn't find any moving company in the internet where it was not very transparent. So I created a comparison platform. Yeah. It was not a plan at all. It was also not a plan for Break Stuff. It was just a personal passion. Yeah, I started collecting basketball cards, as I mentioned, in the 90s. Everybody will know Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, this era, and trading cards were everywhere. That was my first touch point, I would say, with trading cards. But then I forgot about it, and I came back to the hobby around 2017, 2018, just for the personal interest and the passion for basketball in general, and playing fantasy sports a lot brought me back to collecting trading cards. And the idea also popped up a few months later by talking to a lot of collectors, and then also later a lot of investors. There are a lot of pain points in the community, and a lack of digitalization. And COVID, of course, accelerated it in the end. And that's where we're here right now. Short story.
So that's very interesting, because you have the perspective of someone who enjoyed collectibles and collected your own cards back in the 90s, and then came back to the space when you saw or you heard that collectibles started to go digital. So let's talk about collectibles in the new era, right? The where we are, the new NFT space, where we're standing in terms of developments for it. What do you think about where we're standing? I know you quickly mentioned there are a lot of pain points in there, and there are still tools and solutions need to be created, and probably that's also why you created Break Stuff. How exactly did you realize those pain points? Did you got in or started buying NFTs and got into the space and figured out, there needs to be this and that, or you kind of like understood it really quickly and tried to figure it out if there was ways of doing things that you wanted to do but weren't available? Like, how exactly did you did you realize that there were some pain points in the space as we know it right now?
Yeah. Regarding NFTs, I will come back to this in a second, because the original starting point of Breakstuff and my idea of becoming an entrepreneur in that space was originally when I started collecting physical cards. It's all about physical cards as well at the end, but I started in 2018, and I was collecting cards, and I'm thinking about what can I do. I will not buy and sell on eBay because of the high fees and a lot of other stuff. So why not create an own marketplace? With no coding experience, I set it up, onboarded a few hundred users, made some sales, but at the end I quickly realized, okay, it's nice to have, but you have to provide more USP, more features to the community, which is necessary. And then all with the COVID stuff, and also a lot of entrepreneurs, investors came into the hobby. We see it's also an investment case. It's far beyond just collecting also as a personal interest. And then I found out, in a lot of talks, that grading is also an important part in the community, because when you send in a physical card to the States, there are only a few companies. They are trusted. They were overrun by the demand, by the submissions. So they had, for example, PSA, the market leader of grading sports cards, has a backlog of 10 million cards. So they're working on it right now to get it reduced. But we see there's a lot of demand. There are a lot of submissions of cards, but there's no digitalization. There's no digital alternative to help them reduce the backlogs. Okay, they have now acquired some AI company, and they're working better in that space. So we will see a change here. And then recently NFT came into the space as well. And that's very interesting to see the combination of physical items and digital items.
And by grading, you mean, is this like a process in the market where basically experts on trading cards and people who are very, very familiar with those, or have a specific like checklists that they check, is grading a tool that provides authenticity and verification for those trading cards? Is that what grading really is? Or is it just a way of just saying the quality of this card is graded at a specific scale because it hasn't been taken care of, or it doesn't really look legit? Like, how exactly grading works, if you could just share a few words, because you mentioned grading, and I know that it's also a very important part of Breakstuff. So I want to understand what exactly does grading mean in the market.
Absolutely, because when you get a good grade, it can increase the value of a card by 3 to 4x on average, but there's no limit regarding it, depending on the card, of course. But at the end, that's why everybody wants to submit his cards to get an increase of their value. What is grading in general? It's both. It's some kind of verification, authenticity, and it's also a visual check. If the centering, the print is fine, if the corners, the edges are in a good shape, and also the surface and all stuff like that. So it's some they are working, a lot of graders at the companies. They take a look at your cards, they put it in a card holder, they print out the label, and then send it back to you with a grade between 1 and 10. But it's different. Every company has their own notes and an own system.
That's very interesting, because I always debated, for instance, in my newsletter, when I wrote about a couple of digital collectible companies like F1 Delta Time and NBA Top Shot, which I'm sure you're quite familiar with them. I always went back and debated how like digitalization really is a game changer for collectibles, or also on physical and real life. Like the objects that people collected from years and years ago, things that everyone has. Like, for instance, I have a basketball signed by Michael Jordan, actually, and another one from Ronaldo, the one from Brazil, not the one for Portugal, because everyone confuses them. But and the thing is that like I wonder, like in the future, say I want to sell them or whatever, like people are gonna say, yeah, but how can like we know those are legit, right? How can we know those are authentic and that they were actually signed by Michael Jordan, right? So or Ronaldo. So the whole physical element, putting it into digital, is one that I'm very fascinated about, and when I think that, you know, as long as like couple of like factors could be included, like how scarce this element is, or how exclusive, how popular, how like what's the quality of these objects, then that like kind of like gets it gets me a better grade, as you mentioned, with, you know, the tools that you mentioned of grading in AI, but that are different than just having the object. You know what I'm saying? So I wonder, like, how exactly are you thinking about break stuff for that, and also like how break stuff plans to be different from other marketplaces in the space of collectibles, and how like what do you think about break stuff for its competitive advantage and its like differentiator?
Mhm. Yeah, I would say it all comes to this one-stop shop approach that we are offering. Meaning, when you are a collector, you want to talk about your personal interest, your passion, or your investment case, whatever. You have to go to different social networks we all know, and talk and find your niche, find the contacts, and talk to them. On the other hand, you have to use different marketplaces with different kind of fees, like eBay or other niche marketplaces. And for grading, as I mentioned before, you have to submit it physically to the States, and that will cost you some maybe $30 or more, depending on the submission. And you have to wait at the moment for 6 months, maybe 8 months, yeah, to get the card back. So when you want to flip it from the investor perspective, that's a no-go. So you need an objective and a third-party opinion right now. Maybe the player has a good streak and a hot streak, yeah, and you want to sell it on the peak. You need the grading right now, and then flip it on the marketplace. Tomorrow he can have a bad game, and it's all gone, the value. So yeah, and therefore we see our advantage, or our value proposition on the market, to offer everything out of one hand, bring digital features for the physical items, yeah, and provide them, and also then connect it with the NFT case. Yeah, we haven't been there yet, but I'm happy to talk about that as well. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, so let's go to that point. NFTs, non-fungible tokens. For those who don't know what this is, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but non-fungible tokens basically represent something unique. It's something that it's you can't change it. It's basically it's unique, and there are digital assets that are becoming NFTs, non-fungible tokens, to allow people to interact and gather digital goods, right? Because people love to collect goods, but how they will collect digital goods, then NFTs is the answer. You also mentioned investment asset or flipping, which is very quite unique term in the space. Flipping is basically just buying low and selling high when it comes to a digital good. What do you think about that new investment vehicle as NFTs? What are your thoughts about the people that are actually buying just because they know eventually value will change, mainly from the massive amount of change in demand, meaning that eventually if there's 10 people now in the market, when there will be 2,000 people in the market, the price of my asset is obviously going to increase. Of course, this is just an example, but do you think it's legit? Do you think there's actually an investment vehicle over there that's going to be carrying, as any other asset, it's going to be carrying its own risk, it's going to be carrying its own variation and its own volatility? Like, what are your thoughts around that, Michael?
Yeah, good question. I would say, also comparing both worlds, the physical world and the digital world, I see differences here, especially when it comes to the investor perspective. So when you take a look at the physical aspect, it's more a long-term, more a passion thing. You're more related maybe to sports. There is some personal interest here, and on digital space, you maybe have that as well, but you're coming more from the investor and crypto side, I would say, yeah. And taking more, your more interest is here regarding the short-term investment. Maybe also long-term, but I'm seeing it more as a short-term perspective, because you mentioned flipping when we talked about that. It's generating revenue at the end, of course. But I see both worlds really coexisting, because the physical trading cards world has been there since the last century. When you take a look at vintage basketball cards, there was the highest sales record during the year with 6.6 millions for a Mickey Mantle vintage rookie card. When you compare it to the NFT space, you don't have these sales records yet, but of course there's also high sales. When you take a look at the soccer cards, for example, Messi or Ronaldo, the Portuguese one, they sold for a few 100,000, and Messi, I guess, for 1 million NFTs. So it's coming there as well, but I see them both coexisting, and it's a little bit different, when you take a look at what kind of user base, what kind of people are in there. But it's very interesting, and it will rise for sure. We are just in the early phase of this market.
And for those that maybe are very less knowledgeable about cards in specific or collectibles in specific, how exactly should they think if people listening here this episode are thinking, okay, this sounds very exciting, I know this, like this Michael is like super legit about the future of NFTs and about collectibles, and of course there's something there and I want to get in there, it's just that I don't understand anything about it. What would you say are kind of like the most relevant factors that will drive the price of a specific card or asset? I know that you mentioned grading, so probably, the first thing you do is you try to figure out what's the grade on this specific asset. But how exactly can you predict or think about what's going to drive changes in prices that will benefit me as an amateur investor, of course, not thinking about the long term, thinking about I want to maybe flip a couple of cards, I want to maybe flip a couple of NBA Top Shot moments, or I want to find opportunities in that space. Is there any like kind of like not advice, but if like friends from friends come and ask you like what they should put attention to, is there anything, any 2, 3, or 4 things that come to mind that you would tell them, look at this, look at that? Is there anything that come to mind?
Yeah, that's a good question. For the physical aspect, you mentioned grading. That's the most important part here. But on the digital side, you don't need the grading for sure. That's clear. But it came all about scarcity. So when you find out about the release of NFTs, whatever it is, avatars, trading cards, other collectibles, it's all about how they market it, how the marketing works, and then the hype is created around it, and regarding the scarcity. So that's also the value. The most value is about NFTs. They're hard to get, of course, and they will rise in value when you be one of the first to get into this drop. Then you have a big advantage here. After that, you can make a lot of money with trades, with sales, but you have to be really on top. Subscribe to as many newsletters as possible, like yours, Ronan, and other sports tech guys and NFT guys, of course. Go on Twitter and stuff like that. Make your research and be one of the first movers. Invest some money, and then that can really pay off. But that's all I can say. The rest must you have to do your own research and see.
Interesting. Michael, we all know that in the recent 1 or 2 years, the NFT space and collectibles literally boomed. Like they went crazy, and everyone started, getting into it and everything. Like I knew about it probably less than a year ago, so I consider myself also an early adopter. but it is very, very new, very fresh, and of course, everything that goes up probably has to readjust itself at at specific time. So, I wonder what's your take on how this space becomes sustainable and trusted by the general public. Meaning, how do we go from like couple of like degenerates that were super, bullish on this specific space and that got in and probably drove prices insane and just made all the media outlets talk about it for a while, but then kind of like reduced the popularity and came back to the idea that only a few people are in there, but we're not there in massive adoption yet. How do we make it sustainable? How do we bring in the general public? And how exactly are you thinking about that for break stuff? Like what is your plan to making the space sustainable for everyone and available and trusted by the public?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. I would say when it comes to physical aspect, you have every US sport fan until the Wall Street broker. Everybody is investing and excited about this hobby. You have a lot of options here. In the digital space, we are very early, as mentioned. And of course, this technology, blockchain technology, everything that's in connection with NFTs has to develop, has to get mature. Yeah, but we will see it will come sooner or later. At the end, you have to make your own research, as I mentioned. You have to stick to that and find out what's really carrying the value, and then get inside. Get into it, invest, and see how it goes. But at the end, I would say it's the technology. When you take a look at Bitcoin, for example, you see that it's also becoming mainstream. Everybody wants to invest in crypto. You can pay with crypto, with Bitcoin in El Salvador. I heard today. So you can pay your meal and everything else. So it's getting more mainstream. So it's just a matter of time, I would say. And the technology is also developing in a really fast pace. So just a matter of time until everybody can really get quickly into it, open his own wallet, and buy his NFTs.
Yeah, and I think that probably just gonna add one more thing to your point is that interoperability between what your asset, your digital asset is, and what it can do, right? Because as you mentioned, social networks is like kind of like important, like how you interact with it with your friends and with other people in the community, or what kind of benefits it can give you, right? If everyone owns a specific NFT around Miami Heat, and those that own it go to the game and they have a specific benefit during the game or whatever, like then people are gonna be like, oh, so I also need that, so they're gonna start buying, right? It's like merch. Probably not the best example, but whatever.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah, the idea is how can we make those things more useful and give options to people to essentially have benefits from them and have more reasons than just having an investment vehicle or just something because of the hype to be there, right? It's more of like a reason. Absolutely. Like give me a reason, right?
Or just, I would say, utility. NFTs with utility. I guess it's an important point. Because when you take a look, for example, at Soare from France, they connecting their NFTs with fantasy football, for example. And break stuff. When I came back to this, we create when you scan your card, you get this instant AI grading, and you can also mint your own NFT. Then you can create an NFT out of it just for showcasing and say, hey, that's my newest card, graded as a 10 from Luka Doncic, for example, and it's nice animated and it's really fancy, I would say. Or you use it to gain attraction on the marketplace, to find better buyers or get a better sales price out of it. And on the other hand, we are also interested to release unique NFT series with famous clubs and athletes for sure. It's a hard I would say business, because a lot of companies and deals are always in the making. But we have some contacts here, so we're gonna release something else as well. And yeah, I would say that makes it really really unique, and also has the utility in the specific ecosystem.
And you mentioned that Breakstuff is launching on 2022 first quarter of next year. So it's currently under development. So I just want to wonder if you can just give us a quick, behind the scenes of what's going on there. Like what are you developing as of now? Like, is it like the marketplace, or that you're making sure that everything works technically speaking, or that you're building specific tools for then being able to launch it? What else, like, are you cooking? Like, what's in the oven for Breakstuff? If I know maybe you don't want to be sharing everything because of competitors and everything, but if you can just give us a very clear overview of what are you thinking, and what's your timeline, and what's the roadmap for Breakstuff?
I can share some insights. I would say we are working, as I mentioned, social network marketplace, and then the core features, of course, the AI grading and machine learning, and that's the most important part, and it needs also the most attention, I would say, working on this. Because you gain a lot of data during the process, and you have to take care of it and get the results out you want to. Yeah? So it has to be very specific and accurate, of course. Yeah, and we are working on this right now to get a little bit more better results that we have right now in the test phase. But we are very optimistic to release the first prototype to our early adopters on the waiting list during January. And then after the feedback and all the bug fixing stuff, we will release it in the stores. So February is very realistic to see. We are also in a lot of investor talks. I've pitched a case in Austria here. It's like the Shark Tank in America. Really, really exciting. And yeah, we got some a few very interesting offers, but we have to close the deal for sure. That lasts a few weeks. But yeah, it would be great to have them on board and really scale.
I'm looking forward to it, Michael. It's been such a fun time hosting you on the Halftime Snacks. I can't leave without asking you a last and more personal question, and that is, if you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, say 20 years younger self, what would it be?
To my younger self, I would say, don't be shy. Yeah, go forward, talk to people about your ideas, and focus on them. Yeah, and no looking back.
Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy learning about the business and technology behind sports, make sure you subscribe to the Sports Tech Biz newsletter. I'll leave the link in the show notes. See you all next week. Bye-bye.